So what I do feel that we're going to see as this interest rate, rise and normalization process happens, we are going to see some policy changes that just get quietly happen in the background that all of a sudden unlock some borrowing potential for everyone. And I think that's exciting. So my advice to everyone is, if you've asked the questions before and the answer is no, in terms of no, you can't borrow it.
Welcome to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, the leading weekly show to help you unlock your full self, health and wealth potential. I'm your host, Bushy Martin, and each week I go deep with the best investors, experts, leaders and founders to find out what it takes to break free from the grind, discover freedom and live by design. Subscribe now and join me and get invested in the life you really want. Let's get started.
What I'd love to do now, Shan, is sort of pivot into the areas that are near and dear to both of us as far as the importance of finance to people's lives, not just property, but generally, and talk about some of the areas that you've got some real expertise in that regard. So to sort of kick that off, given your personal and the business experience you've had in the lending industry and the banking system to some degree, what do you see as some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making around borrowing money particularly to buy property?
That's a good question. Look, I think the number one mistake is getting emotional or emotionally attached to a property. There's polaring sides, but for example, if you get somebody that is buying an own occupied, so the home that they're going to live in, they would generally, if they fall in love with it and are emotionally attached to it, they will generally pay more because it has to be this property. And it's one of the biggest mistakes I think people can make. And the same thing on the flip side for investors, that they might actually choose to invest in their own backyard because their emotional attachment to be able to do a drive-by on the property ad hoc to check up on them. And we quite often do some coaching with our clients to sort of go, well, actually, no, an investment property is a business transaction. Let's keep it over here so you can't see it. So then you're just focusing on the numbers. And but yeah, in terms of like mistakes, I think getting emotionally attached to a property or a area or a concept is probably one of the biggest mistakes I see made.
Yeah, it's spot on. Well, what about in terms of when people approach the loan process? Because both of us, I've seen a lot of people who come in with an expectation that is way different to what they're about to experience because the lack of understanding of what the lending policies are and how they vary. Is there anything that you've seen from that front that is a common mistake that you see?
I think the common mistake that people might make is, again, perception, that they expect it to be a certain way, particularly if the last loan they did was pre-COVID and the requirements were far less. And then they're like, hang on a second, you're asking for everything I ate for breakfast since 1972. Like, what is this about? I don't very often focus on those types of things with clients though, because that's our job. That's our job to coach them and set the journey expectation and go, okay, listen, it's been a long time since we've done this. Here's what we can expect from here. And then when we isolate which bank, okay, here's what you can expect for your journey with this bank. And then we couch that expectation and then the loan processor backs it up. So I don't really focus too much on what the client mistakes might be because as a broker, we can mitigate those and navigate around them.
Love it. That's exactly right. We're here to actually educate them on how it works and then take the stress, pain and heartache away to make a good experience. I love that. Now, if someone was to look to get a loan, why do you think property buyers and investors should engage a savvy finance broker over going direct to a bank or just an average broker?
This one is so close to my heart because I did work for a bank for 10 years. in really, really simple terms, a bank will have a limited number of loan options, number one. So you're limited as to what you can choose. And then number two, there is no training in how to strategically place the lending in the right manner for your protection, the client's protection. The training at the bank level is all about bank risk mitigation and bank risk protection. And they don't even teach their lending managers that there are different ways. They just say it's this way. And it might be cross-collateralizing properties and things like that, which, as you know, we avoid at all costs. So, there's just two really, really big things that why people could be choosing brokers. There's a multitude. How long have we got? But I think knowledge is probably, let's put knowledge at number one. Yeah. A good broker can isolate what it is that you need, how to strategically design that lending that's best for your risk mitigation, and then where can we put that's best for them. Whereas the bank has their bank products, that's it.
Well, you mentioned earlier the best interest duty, and for anyone listening in, you may or may not be aware that the broking industry actually has a legal duty of care under the best interest duty to make sure that we're actually looking at the best possible solution to suit your specific circumstance. The banks don't have that obligation at all, which is really interesting, actually, in the context of making sure that you think you want your client to have the best possible exercise. If the obligation's not there, then they can pretty much do what they like in that context. So I think that's a really important application to make. And certainly a reason why, if someone's serious about getting someone on their side of the table to look after them and being able to read through that maze of constantly changing lending dynamics and criteria. And as you know, it's a daily exercise in that regard. Then someone who's got the finger on the pulse there is going to make a massive difference. Let's talk about the qualities and character traits then that you think separate a great finance broker from the rest, Shan.
I think a great finance broker has lived the journey, and they draw on that journey to actually then have an empathetic, come from an empathetic space to understand what that client needs. Yeah. I guess I'm going on record to say most brokers can get somebody a loan. We might get a few more grey hairs. It's a very stressful environment, but it's doable. Most brokers can get the loan. But at the end of the day, do you want the loan, or do you want somebody that's going to absorb most of that stress and hold your hand along the way and get you there and then celebrate at the end and cheer you on and then check in with you every 12 months to say, how's it going? Is it okay? Do you need any help? It's support. Support probably nails it down to a key, and they're not going to get that from the bank level.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I think I'd also like your thoughts, because you've sort of worked with a number of one-person broking shows in the past. How do you feel about that compared to a team like the KnowHow team? What's your feeling around about that in terms of the benefits to the borrowers and the clients at the end of the day?
And look, I'll liken that to, an old adage that people say about children, like it takes a village. And it really, truly does. Anybody out there who's raising children, it takes a village. And brokering is no different. It really does take a village to get this right. For me, I saw the saying the other day, and like I steal it. I'm cocky enough to know that I'm really good at what I do, but I'm intelligent enough to know that I can't do it on my own. And that support and that team. And I can't tell you that, in our group, the amount of times I pick up the phone and call one of the other brokers within our group, and I say, oh my God, this is happening. And they go, that's nothing, get a load of this. And, it's sort of like, it's way less isolating. There's this support network, it's a team environment, and we champion each other along the way. how that transpires across to a client when they enter into a single broker versus a brokerage is that there's the right teams have a family unit in place. So if for any reason that broker needs to be with their family that day because their child has medical appointments or something like that, there's somebody in the background that's got your back, and they'll help answer questions and keep that, the client on the right journey and calm and happy. And that's exactly what we want.
Yeah, beautifully said. So if someone's listening in going, okay, well, there's 16,000 brokers in Australia. A lot of them are one-person shows. What would you say to them in terms of the keys that they need to understand, or the questions they need to ask to select a great finance broker to help them?
Yeah, I think from a client perspective, the majority of Australians, they don't know what they don't know. And that's in terms of loans. And that's okay, because it's our job to know. What I want for everybody is that they've got somebody that they can talk to. And I don't just mean, hey, what sort of loan can I get? Like, I mean, really talk, get deep and personal and say, this is going on and I need to find $200 a week because, my child's going to have to go into chemotherapy and I can't stop working. Right. Be vulnerable, lay it out there. If that person doesn't respond, they're not your person. Yeah. If that person doesn't support you or check in and go, are you okay? Yeah, they're not your person. So it's not always about what is the right question to ask, is can you talk to them and really talk? Because if you can't talk to them now, you're not going to be able to talk to them in 6 months, 12 months if something goes wrong with that loan.
Absolutely spot on, though. It's extremely well said. It's sort of shifting now into the current environment as interest rates rise and borrowing capacities are dropping through the floor as a consequence of that. What thoughts can you give property buyers or home loan refinancers to actually optimise their property purchasing power and capacity moving forward? Any tips?
There's a lot of simple things that we can do. I mean, there's the obvious ones of like, let's get rid of those credit cards or, consolidate some of those personal loans. And they're all the obvious choices. What a lot of people don't realize is that the discretionary spending, so the day-to-day, and in the world of the tapper, the card on the whole tap machine, and we don't use cash so much anymore. It's people, I feel, and myself included in here, we've lost touch as to how much we're actually spending. So if you sit down and you look at even just the last 30 days of your bank account and go, okay, that's when you can understand what's going on in your own finances. So I think that's probably something that, we need to do a lot more of.
Yeah, you're right. That sort of the tapping generation now, it's just so easy to pull out the card. We've actually stopped doing that. Sonia and I now, we'll chuck it in the bottom and it's coming out of their check account, so the money's not there, that it can't be spent. It gets you thinking about what you're spending on, why you're spending on it. So incorporating that discipline is really, really important.
100%. And setting just one of those little triggers for yourself. It means that now it can't spend. So we have all these hints and tips and tricks of how to set your own little triggers to kind of go, okay, I'm at my capacity now, for that week or that month or whatever it is. But a lot of people would not taking the time to set our own little alerts, so to speak.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, no, and it all starts there. It starts with the little things. And if that discipline starts to build and that thinking approach starts to occur, then that starts to ripple out into everything you're doing. So really good advice on that front. I want to now shift into an area that's getting a lot of play at the moment because people are maxing out on their borrowing capacities because of the rates are going high and the borrowing capacities have dropped pretty substantially as a consequence of that. All of a sudden, self-managed super fund properties have come back into the fray, and I know you've got some expertise in that area. Can you talk to us about lending to buy through a self-managed super fund and how that works and the things that potential people need to look out for in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, lending to an SMSF, I think it's an amazing tool. It's an amazing vehicle, and it did get a little bit of a bad rap a few years ago, but it's coming back now with a vengeance. And for those who want to get into an investment property, but either A, can't in their own personal borrowing capacity, or B, don't really want to perhaps contribute any of their own money right now because they have young children and they need to hold some of that money back, then SMSF is definitely a really good option. There's some small limitations in what you can do. So you can't build a house with it. You have to buy something that's already in place. So there's a few little things at that. But again, a really good broker will actually help you through what you can and can't do. What's important on that one is start the conversation early. If it's something that's in the back of your mind, make the phone call now to actually talk to somebody. It can take up to 6 months to get the SMSF established and the money in place before we can even look at the lending. So I get multiple calls a week saying, can I do it? Well, yes, you can. I need you to go talk to your accountant. Here's the next steps. And then I'm going to touch base with you in 3 months. Oh, so we can do it in 3 months? Probably not, but I'm going to call you anyway. So again, we're coming back to like opening up that conversation. There is no question that's silly. It's if you get the right person, they'll coach you through it. They'll tell you what you need to do. You can go off and do it, in that time frame, and then and then it functions just as normally as investment properties. They just get on with it and do their thing.
Well, and from a financial perspective, there is a lot of upfront and longer term benefits because if you set up a self-managed super fund, any of the income or contributions, you only pay a maximum of 15% tax at the moment versus most people are on 30% plus for income earned outside of super. If you hold the property beyond a retirement age and then sell the property, there's no capital gains tax at all imposed on that situation, and any rental income post-retirement age isn't taxed either. So there's some pretty significant benefits for those like myself who invest for the long haul. So some really benefits there. And on the lending front too, Shannon, and going, correct me if I'm wrong now, but when I got heavily involved in the self-managed super lending space nearly 10 years ago now, it was very restrictive. You could only borrow a maximum of 60%. You had to have 200 to 250 minimum in a self-managed super fund to consider it. You had to have a minimum of 10% cash left in the self-managed super fund after the property was bought. Most of the banks then would still get personal guarantees from the borrowers outside of the super fund. So that something went belly up, the bank could still come and have a crack at the individual, even though it was supposed to be a non-recourse loan. I know that landscape's changed. Can you just share some of the key bits that are now available to people who are thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the borrowing percentage, the interest rates are tiered upon the lending to value ratio or the LVR of the property. So if we're looking at sub 60 or between 60, 70, 70, 80, then the interest rate is lower, the lower the LVR.
Yeah.
In terms of the liquidity that you mentioned, so holding available cash in the funds, there are still a couple of lenders that require a minimum of 200,000 in the super fund before they'll actually go down to a lending option. There are actually a couple now that require zero liquidity, and they require $0 to remain in the account on settlement. As it's making its comeback, lenders are getting on board as to what are the demands of the community, what are the demands of the people, and what can we do about that. So again, it's not a one size model that fits all. At the moment, we've just gained an approval this week for a client that literally only had 140,000 in their SMSF to begin with.
Yep.
And we're still retaining 30,000 of that in their account as in liquidity on settlement.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's been becoming much more accessible. I know that, the days that I was heavily involved in it, most of the loan terms were 15 to 20 years. I know they're now 30. They're doing interest-only periods. They're offering offset accounts. So they're very much functioning like the normal residential housing loans do. There's a lot more structure around it, which we won't bore everyone with tonight. So if anyone really wants to learn more about the self-managed super space, I'm really going to encourage them to reach out to you directly, Shan, to take them through that and how that looks for them and the steps they need to take to walk through both in terms of preparation and going, because it's certainly an opportunity area. If it's handled well, it can be very good. If you don't do it well, it can be a disaster. And again, it relies on having the right people around you, not just from the borrowing space, but a really good accountant and a financial planner who needs to be involved in setting up a statement of advice, and the investment rules and the constitution for the self-managed fund are important because there is a lot of compliance. There's audits on an annual basis. There are some additional fees that are associated with managing that process. And don't fool yourself that you can do it all yourself, because you'll be making mistakes that you're not even aware of, given how strict the Superannuation Act is in terms of protecting the interests of the super fund itself. So thanks for sharing that. Now, I want to circle back because we spoke earlier about how important the loan processing process is to a brokerage and the client experience. And, we both Sonia and I have been very supportive and of the business that you've now started to help others to take advantage of that. So can you talk to us a bit about your parallel business, Become a Loan Processor?
Yeah, thank you. This is exciting, and I'm so fortunate that I'm in a position with yourself and Sonia to be able to release something like this and be supported through the process. So Become a Loan Processor is a business where I train loan processors for other brokers. So back when we spoke about loan processors and what they do, currently in Australia, there is no training, formal training or any training that you can get for loan processors. The only way that we get trained one is if they've actually worked for a broker and been trained on the job. So, but our journey with myself being a loan processor, but as well as with brokers in our group and hiring and no longer hiring and, getting a variety of different loan processing options. And what we weren't willing to compromise is the client journey. It didn't matter who that person was. We were not willing to compromise the client journey. And so it got me thinking one day. I created it because it's like, well, we can't be the only brokers experiencing this journey. I still get phone calls today saying, "Are you still a loan processor?" I'm like, no, I'm definitely not anymore. So if there's still brokers out there desiring that service, so then it's like I got to thinking other people need customer-centric loan processors. So I thought, hell, why don't I train them? So I created Become a Loan Processor. And it's a training and a support network where they can actually train in how to do what they do. And then there's weekly sessions in training them, live sessions in how to do all those fine-tuning things. And that's where we get to cover a lot more of customer-centric focus. This is why we do it. Not just this is what you do. This is what you do, and this is why, because this is the journey it gives both to the client and the broker, and that's your job as the heartbeat of the business.
Brilliantly said, and I love what you're doing there, because our loan admin team has the privilege of joining you for the training sessions on that, and as you say, it's not just the hard skill stuff about the admin side of the equation. It's the relationship stuff and the communication approach that really makes or breaks that experience. And I love how you've made it a really important part of what you're doing with Become a Loan Processor. So for any brokers or others are out there who are really struggling, either you're on your own and you're getting buried in the administration of the exercise, or people who think, well, this might be a career that I can get into, but maybe similar to yourself, Shan, who bringing up a family, but you've got some skills that you could still want to put into something that's satisfying, and also can help fund the family. Then jumping on to join you with Become a Loan Processor is a great way to do it. How can people find Become a Loan Processor, Shan?
Look, it's as simple as Googling Become a Loan Processor. It is that simple. I will make sure that there's a link in the show notes as well for everyone. But it's there. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we have a website, and some great tools on there that people can access. Everyone can access as well.
Love it. Now, just to sort of round out the discussion on the finance piece, what's your read on where lending is heading, given the constant changes that are happening in the industry and across the lenders, and what impact do you think this is going to have on people who are looking to borrow money?
Yeah, I think at the moment there's a lot of focus by media and people alike that with the rising interest rates, it does lower the borrowing capacity. So it can be quite alarming. Sometimes people realize how much they can or can't borrow when they choose to do something. What I like to remind people is that banks are businesses. They are there to make money and report to their shareholders. They're not there to really serve us. And at the end of the day, in business 101, if they're not making money, they figure out ways how to make money. So, and that's not always something that's visible in terms of, like, most people would focus on the interest rate. There's all these, as you would know, macro prudential changes that happen in the background of, like, all of a sudden it unlocks an extra 100,000, and it's like, it doesn't get announced in the media. It doesn't come out there. So what I do feel that we're going to see as this interest rate, rise and normalization process happens, we're going to see some policy changes that just get quietly happen in the background that all of a sudden unlock some borrowing potential for everyone. And I think that's exciting. So my advice to everyone is, if you've asked the questions before and the answer is no, in terms of no, you can't borrow it, keep checking in every few months. Has that answer changed? That's the only way we'll capture when it does change. So it's exciting.
I love you saying that. And the secret to that is having a relationship with an investment and a finance savvy broker like yourself, Shan, who's on top of what's happening day to day. I mean, your inbox gets filled up with policy changes from the banks every day and week, and those little opportunities that creep in. And as you say, banks are businesses. So if people aren't able to borrow money, that also means that banks are doing it tough because they're not writing the volumes of loans that they used to, which will be affecting their bottom line, which means that they are likely to become more creative around how they can create opportunities for people to borrow money. So having a relationship with yourself and other good brokers is an absolute key to, because you get a no today doesn't mean it's going to be a no tomorrow. So brilliantly said. I now want to switch into the infamous ambush fast ball round, Jan. So get out your cigarette and your blindfold because I want to hit you up with the fast fire questions and you know these well. What's your favourite quote and why?
Okay, favourite quote. Life is like riding a bike. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. It's from Albert Einstein, and it's 100% true. I love it because life is all about moving and adapting and changing and pivoting. And it's good when things don't work because then that doesn't work. We pivot and we try something else.
Love it. Love it. Shifting into the literary field, what's the top book that you'd recommend we read?
I struggle with this question because I'm such a big book person. One of my ultimate favorite, though, is there's a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You. It's by Cal Newport, and it's all about why skills trump passion in the quest for the work that you love. It's all about upskilling yourself to be so good they can't ignore you. Great book.
Great. It is a great book. No question about that one. The swinging back into the investment advice arena, and you've touched on some of this already, but what's both the worst and the best piece of investment advice you've ever received?
Okay, so the best piece of investment advice was if I think about becoming a loan processor, I sat on the idea for 3 years before I released it. And it was actually my business coach that said, Sharyn, you cannot learn to drive a parked car. You have to get this out there and then figure the rest out as you go. And that was actually probably one of the best pieces of advice because it will be a very, very good returns.
Yeah.
And look, the worst piece of advice was, probably, she'll be right, mate. Just do it. She'll be right. And it's like, no, hang on a second. Research, ask questions. There's no stupid question. So,
no, beautifully said. I always ask this question as well because I believe it's our daily disciplines that create the opportunity to achieve sustainable success. However, we decide to find that. So, what's a a personal happy habit or a rewarding ritual that you've actually employed that's contributed most to your success?
I think this one's hilarious. I would love to say that I'm one of those people that get up, for the 5 a.m. club and so forth. Most of the time, I'm actually feel like I'm winning the day if I can actually finish my cup of coffee while it's hot, given I have young children. However, one thing that I really try to do first, and this is one of those little mechanisms that I set in place to ensure procrastination doesn't creep its way in, is do the ugly bits first. Do the ugly bits first. Smash them out first thing. Then they're done. You're not then spending the whole day thinking, oh my God, I have to do that. Do the ugly bits first.
Love it. Love it. It gets that monkey off your back straight away. And just, the loaded items immediately when you do that. But not many people do it. So love that one. Now, that's pretty much covered off on those. Is there a question that I haven't asked you that you would like me to? And if so, what would your response be?
Look, I'm going to plead the fifth on this one. I don't know what I don't know. I'm a very humble and normally a very quiet person. So you know me very well, Bushy, and that this was a nice little challenge for me to actually talk. But one question I didn't get asked. As a society, no, I won't. I won't plead the fifth. As a society, are we all being vulnerable enough? My answer is no. Absolutely not. The more we talk, the more we understand, the more we connect. There's not enough connection at the moment, so let's start talking.
Yeah, that's really sage advice. So if we just sort of summarize our awesome conversation today, Shan, what would be your key, and I'm probably focusing on the finance piece, what are your key takeaways and initial actions that aspiring property buyers or loan refinancers need to consider?
That's so simple. Again, you can't learn to drive a parked car. Start the conversation. I have people that I've worked with for 3 or 4 years before we actually write a loan, because we're fine-tuning, we're making little pivots, we're, things like that. Start the conversation. The right person will get you there.
Ask the question. That is the key piece. For those like myself who really resonated with our chat today, Shan, as always, and they're either interested in talking to you about the broking piece or finding out more about becoming a loan processor, how can they find out more and get more involved with you?
Yeah, amazing. First of all, in terms of the broker space, we can jump onto our KnowHow Finance website. There is actually an appointment link, so you can actually book directly in with me just to have a chat. And also there's some links through to the Become a Loan Processor page, and then you'll be able to get direct access to me from there. You can find me LinkedIn and all those normal places. It's not as Shan. I like Shan, but it's not as Shan. It's Sharyn, Shalyn. I'm out there.
Yes, now I should have emphasised that Sharyn with a Y, so Shryn. It's an important distinction because if people start typing in Sharyn with an O, they're going to start scratching their head. So it's Sharyn with a YN. And just to reinforce those key opportunities to catch up with you, Shan, if anyone wants to have a chat in a no sales, very safe, no obligation environment, and an opportunity to ask any pressing questions and share it with the community, I want you to feel free to join us on our recently launched the Property Hub Collective Facebook community. And you can do that just by searching the Property Hub Collective in Facebook or clicking on the link in the show notes. And as you've already said, Shan, if anyone wants to book in to have a private chat with yourself, just jump onto knowhowproperty.com.au now and click on the purple book appointment button on the top right-hand corner of the homepage, and then select one of the appointment options to lock in a free call. So, Shan, I really want to thank you for having the courage to join me today. I think you underestimate yourself. You're a great communicator, and I know everyone's going to warm to everything that you've shared with us today. So really appreciate you joining me, and I'm really keen to keep the conversation going.
Thanks so much, Bushy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, your home for property investment insights and inspiration. And don't leave yet until you've taken the next step towards living by design by getting my award-winning book, Get Invested, absolutely free when you sign up at knowhowproperty.com.au or bushymartin.com.au. And finally, make sure you subscribe to Property Hub to get your weekly dose of Get Invested inspiration, along with every episode of Realty Talk, Australia's leading property show for red-hot property investing news and insights, direct from industry leaders and influencers. Remember to always get invested in your knowledge, and I look forward to seeing you next time.